Very good. Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so thank you everybody for coming. We'll begin the EDIC meeting for today. There's 4 items on the agenda. Number 1 is approve the Tax Exempt Review Committee meeting minutes of 7/26/2022. And we have the words in front of us, so if anybody has any changes or corrections, otherwise we will accept a motion.
Move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
There's only one, it's a typo, but
Okay.
for my,
No, that's good.
it's John, Jon Isert, not John, very small.
Very good.
Okay, I can make a second.
No, that's good. We appreciate that. So we have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, update on the TIF request for the Herberger's building at West Acres. Jim?
Yes, in March, you had received a request from a developer that was looking at turning the old Herberger's building into a new project that would remove that building and have main floor commercial and housing above. Just with a combination of interest rates and construction costs, they've just put that project on the shelf. So I don't expect to hear anything on that real soon. I think they're still in some discussion with West Acres, but they're not actively working on that project anymore. So I wanted you to be aware of that because I've had several questions about it over the last several months.
Any other comments? But I guess this is an example of, I mean, sometimes projects don't always come to fruition. There's lots of things that can impact. And so I don't know if there's any, go ahead, John.
No, just, Mr. Chairman, just an editorial comment that this shows the sensitivity to interest rates and building costs and why we need to partner with private sector in getting these projects done. That we see this, and we'll see another one right after this. So.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? John, I'm sure you could give us some examples that don't come in front of our committee where it's impacted the economy. That's just how business is, and that's how it goes. And so,
Yeah, with the increased costs in construction, and then obviously with the rise in interest rates, it either makes people relook a project, whether that's canceling it, scaling it back, all sorts of different things.
and the good news is I've heard that lumber costs are coming back down again. I don't know if anybody can verify that, but I'm doing some remodeling at the lake, so I'm trying to look at the optimistic side of that. So, very good. So do we need to take any action on that, or is this information?
No, just information.
Very good. So we'll move on to number 3, update on the sale of 401 3rd Avenue North, the old public health building. Jim?
This is a similar situation. We received a letter formally withdrawing their proposal. This again is a combination of interest rates, construction costs, and the third factor on this was just that there was going to be a hotel involved, and kind of the rates on the hotel have not been going up that much, and they really didn't feel it was going to be feasible to do a hotel as part of the project. And so, to be fair to the city, they're just withdrawing their proposal. I think it'll be up to the city commission to decide, do we go out with another RFP soon? Do we wait and see if the economy changes? Do we take a bigger look at the entire riverfront? Because, it's been 18 months, I think, since we actually sent out this RFP. So, again, more just for your information now. If you have any, thoughts on it, you can certainly relay those to the mayor, Commissioner Pepcorn, because the city commission will have to decide how to proceed with this. So,
And so basically, this is the formal notification, and so basically it comes back to the city, and so now we have to decide whether we want to reissue an RFP or start from scratch. So I guess, and to me, it kind of goes back to us. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that, but it's kind of like we just talked about, like you said, with the previous experience, and so. But I guess from my perspective, to be fair, you have to kind of restart it again, reissue an RFP and give everyone an opportunity and see what happens. I don't know if you have any comments on that. Anybody? John?
One thing to maybe consider would be is depending on what happens with the Civic Center, if there's an announcement on any sort of a building going up or something to that effect, that might be the appropriate time to actually put out an RFP and say, hey, look, this is what we're looking for, and go out and take bids that could be complementary to potentially a performing arts center of sorts.
No, that's a good point. Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, once again, that was just informational, and so we'll just that goes onto the record, and then we'll see what goes from there. So with that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, and that's to review the TIF request for the South University Mixed-Use Project. Jim?
Yeah, thank you. This is in the 1600 block of University South. Probably the more visible business you might be familiar with is Dwayne's Pizza. That's along South University. What's proposed is to remove the houses on the west side of the block and all the commercial buildings along that street. From the medicine shop is in a standalone building. There's numerous businesses in a kind of two-story strip mall, and then Dwayne's Pizza on the far south side. This would be replaced by a 13,000 square foot commercial on the main floor with 127 apartments on the upper floors. There's in the process of getting the property rezoned. That has not come to the city commission yet, and so any recommendation that you make would be contingent on that zoning. If you do happen to have a question on the zoning, and with people here from the planning department, both Megan Elshog and Mark Williams. What I'd like to do first or next is to have Matt Schnakenberg from PFM go through his review. He's online virtually, and so Matt, can you hear us? And do you want to just go through your report and your recommendation?
Certainly, thank you, Jim. Matt Schnakenberg, Managing Director in the Minneapolis office of PFM. Thanks for having me this afternoon. I'll go through kind of the meat of my report, beginning on page 3 is the assistance request. I go through what the applicant is requesting in the form of TIF, and I look at what is actually eligible and how much is eligible. They're requesting just over 5 million, as Jim stated in his email or in his memo. The eligible project is about 4.5 million. I then look at, just do an estimate as to the future value of the property in the project, and that calculates about $4.8 million of TIF over 15 years, and that's with a 3.5% market rate growth. And a present value of about $3.4 million in TIF over the 15 years. So flip to page 6, which is the return analysis. So what I do is we go through and we look at the reasonableness of the assumptions, particularly the expenditures. And then we build our own cash flow in pro forma to take a look at the debt service coverage, and we look at an internal rate of return, and we compare that. We look at that with and without TIF. And so you can see on page 6 of PFM's report, looking at 80% market value, we look at 80% of the hard capital cost, and 80% is a pretty good rule of thumb traditionally. But without TIF, we're looking at 3.27% internal rate of return. With TIF, we're looking at about 7.74% internal rate of return. And typically for a project like this, we'd be looking in the 10 to 15% range for a reasonable return for the investors. The other component of this is the debt service coverage. We state here that the max debt service coverage without assistance is a 1.08 times coverage. And typically lenders, banks will want to see a 1.2 times coverage minimum. And so that falls short of that. With TIF, we're looking at a more reasonable 1.3 times coverage with, in year 3, 1.16 times coverage. And so we determined that, I'll say that we also went through some sensitivity scenarios. What happens if the project costs decrease? Does it become a more viable project without public assistance? And I think we just spoke about how costs are not going down right now. We estimated that they'd have to go down almost 8%. Obviously, that's not something we're seeing right now. We also look at what rental rates would have to do, and they would need to increase almost 40% in order to make this project viable without TIF assistance. And then we look at a combination. So of the two scenarios, project costs go down about 6.5%, while rental rates also going up about 6.5%. And so that's something that we don't see is very likely to occur, especially in this market. So we concluded that this project wouldn't be viable but for this public assistance. Happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions? And if it's okay, I'll start out. I have a question. Maybe you can answer this, Jim. What is the current property taxes paid for that block? And if we can get that in the future, that might be possible. But then the other question is, once this is completed after 15 years, what would the property taxes annually be at that point? So that's my question, because I think sometimes we don't always tell the story that actually these tax incentives pay themselves back multiple times over, but we maybe don't explain that as well as we should. But to me, that's a pretty basic way to understand. Here's this block, what it's paying for property taxes right now. And after 15 years, if we go ahead with this, here's how much they will pay in property taxes forever after that. And so if that makes sense, go ahead, John. And anybody else has a question, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I would just kind of reinforce that I've always looked at these to say, if this project doesn't happen, the existing strip mall stays in place. The existing taxes that we're collecting for that stays in place. If we participate, it's only on the increment. It's the increased value. So the taxing entities that share in those tax dollars will still continue over the 15 years to get the taxes that are generated on that property today. And too often I hear people making the statement, well, we're giving away and other people are having to pay those taxes. And we're seeing it today where we've had 2 canceled projects that will now continue to pay the taxes just as they would if we had provided the incentive. And again, at the end of the incentive period, you have the stepped up basis for the taxes that everybody shares in at that point. So I think it's a really good point, and I think we need to continue to remind people the existing taxes stay the same throughout these projects.
Yeah, Commissioner Pepcorn, on page 4 of the PFM report, they note they had looked up the assessor's value of the property, and it's about $2.5 million. The hard capital costs going into this are going to be $25 million plus other equity, and so again, there's that when Matt was talking about the 80%, they may put in $25 million into this project, but the assessor may just keep it at $20 million because he's comparing it to the property next door. So it's going to be a 10-fold increase in the property taxes. And I think Mr. Cosgrove had a good point. We're not really giving anything away. The only thing we're giving away is something we don't even have.
So I just, and all your points are true, Jim, but what I want to do is keep it as simple as possible. When you talk about here's the property taxes that are being paid right now per year, that will stay the same for 15 years. After that, and this doesn't need to be done today, but I just want to have that number because it's a straight number and the rest gets a little bit confusing. And go ahead, John. I apologize for talking. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. The only other thing I'd add too is that it is creating jobs. I mean, this is going to be a project for a number of hopefully local businesses or regional businesses that are going to have the opportunity to work on a project that otherwise would not have happened.
Any other comments?
And this is Matt. I'll just note that in year 15, we're estimating the taxes just on the increment itself would be around 430,000.
Yeah, and Dave, Mike just gave me the numbers. Currently, the block pays $37,000 a year in property taxes, and when the project's over, they'll pay $452,000.
So that's my point right there. So if you, obviously math is not my strong point, but if you add up the total amount that, if we go ahead with this, the total amount that we would give them in an incentive would be paid back in a very short period of time. And
18 to 24 months.
see, so he's the smart math guy, and so that's a phenomenal. So we don't do a very good job of. We hear politicians say, "Well, you're giving money, and you're increasing my property taxes and giving away money to rich people," when in fact it's the exact opposite. This helps lower our property taxes because the amount that we spend is minuscule compared to the amount of money that's created by these tax incentives. And then the thing that we don't say enough is that's forever. The higher property tax level, then that keeps paid forever. So what that does is increases our property tax base, and so that actually reduces our property taxes. So once again, the mayor and I, we maybe don't do a good job of saying that, and it's kind of, everyone's heard this multiple times from people running for office that you're giving away money, and when in fact it's the opposite. We're actually creating jobs, like John said, but we're also increasing the tax base, and so it's a great thing. With that, I will end my sermon for today, and I apologize for monopolizing the microphone, but any other comments?
I just want to point out that some of the houses on that block, inspections had been targeting them as dangerous buildings and ordering them to be demolished. You know, the previous owner and Mr. Craig has started to demolish some of those homes because, you know, the property values were headed down, not up.
And I will say the neighborhood, obviously, they've had some meetings, and the developer isn't here today, but they have some meetings because there are some people that oppose it, and that's very important that they're having these ongoing discussions. But this is just one portion of that. And so with that, I don't know if there's any comments or questions, but to me, what's our next step, Jim?
Just a recommended motion to recommend approval of the request for tax increment financing to the Fargo City Commission. Eric Johnson will work on the developers agreement, and so once the zoning is through, then this would be on the city commission agenda.
So with that, unless there's any other comments or questions, we would accept a motion.
Motion to approve?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll make a second.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? I apologize for not welcoming you, and thank you for attending. If you don't mind just giving a quick explanation, introducing yourself, if you don't mind doing that.
Sure. My name is Lucas Paper. I work here in town at a local investment firm, and I also do some work at Folkways, which is a local community startup here. Just got on the commission. This is my first meeting, so excited to see the inner workings of how all this goes, especially given this first project is right in my stomping ground where I grew up. So looking forward to a new development in that location, but not looking forward to losing that Dwayne's Pizza built-in smell and taste there. So
Well, first, I would like to welcome you, Lucas, but I don't know if you're aware of this, but they will be staying there. So that was very important to me as well. So
you can't get rid of that 30 years of baked-in
No.
flavor there, though, you know.
that's true.
Chinese place is staying too.
There we go.
Absolutely, absolutely. So any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Very good. That completes our agenda for today. Mayor, go ahead.
Jim, can I have a clarification of who's on this commission? Because in the minutes, it had listed many people, Brishani, different people, but, you know, isn't there just so many people on this commission now?
There are just 7 that's on this Economic Development Incentives Committee. Dr. Bashani is actually on the Renaissance Zone Authority. The only 2 people who are not able to get here today are Jessica Erblain from Gate City and Jim Boos. So
Okay.
plus the 5 of you that are on there.
And if we wanted to increase the size of the commission, Dave could bring that forward to us.
Yeah, there's ex officio members, which include myself, Mike, city attorney, and county representative, and 2 school representatives.
So just to explain to board members, right now the commissioners are doing a retreat. We have 65 commissions or committees in the city of Fargo. So every commissioner is tasked, Dave is tasked to look at his commissions and see if he's got the right number, the right people, and then kind of a bylaw thing of, are we doing what we were tasked to do? So like community development was at one time thinking of stretching over and trying to do this work. So they were saying, well, we want to take control of downtown and do all the tax increment financing and do any developing, and anything can happen downtown, we're going to do it, in which we objected to, because that's really what this commission is designed to do, is to look like an economic development, what happens in the city. So community development actually may disband because there's different committees that do it, and then planning already has a work plan that they have. And what this committee might want to hear is Mark and Nicole will give us a report of the housing report to give us an idea of what we might want to incentivize. And I think the good news, bad news is that suggesting continued development of all sorts of housing options, not just workforce housing. So I think we'll be encouraged by that. But some of our commissioners always wonder, Mr. Pepcorn, kind of they ask the question, are you still pushing apartments downtown, or are you still pushing apartments elsewhere? One of the things we've learned is Fargo seems to take the brunt of apartments. We seem to develop a lot of apartments for the community, and maybe West Fargo should take some, maybe Horace should take some, maybe other entities should start doing that to kind of spread it out amongst the community. If you look at it, the income analysis of West Fargo versus Fargo, West Fargo is higher, and it truly looks like a bedroom community, basically. That's what they're designing. But that brings fraught with issues because their commercial is about 10%. Our commercial is 52%, or 54, Jim? One of those. Yeah. So what we do is we supplement our residents by commercial, and the commercial rate is higher. So for the residents in Fargo, one would say most of the time to Commissioner Pepcorn's comment, we're keeping resident taxes down because of the amount of commercial we have. And the bizarre thing is that Dave and I have seen, we keep having more and more commercial come at us. They like the environment, they like what's going on. Bell Bank, big investor here, could have done that in the cities, come back here, do a headquarters here. So we are seeing some benefits of the community, and that benefit, when we talked to the state of the city, talking to one of the bankers who was just around walking through the area, and he said, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, Fargo's resilient and continues to do well. But I think that, John, you'd probably say it's attractive to the investors, Lucas as well, I would suppose, to come into our community. And so what planning is going to help with us is a growth plan that helps us try to figure out what's the best combination in our growth. What should we do? And what John would love is what's our return on investment? Should it be the south side growing? Should we do infill? What should we do? What Commissioner Pepcorn and I have often noticed is we try to do infill, and then the neighbors object. So if it's an apartment complex, too many apartments, or, a Hawthorne area, what do you want in that site? Single-family home, you want to replace a single-family home, but maybe it won't replace that 6-bedroom single-family with something different. So this commission is tasked with that, and I think what we'll do with planning with Commissioner Pepcorn is just design some informative things to keep you guys abreast of the studies that we've had done that will help Jim bring different things to us.
And when the mayor says we have a lot of commercial in Fargo, I think maybe half of that commercial is the apartments, because that is considered a commercial tax base as far as the city assessor. So that's what's keeping your mill levy down.
Any other comments or additional things? I think the planning department, we have 67 committees, and so the planning department has to do a lot of committee work versus doing planning work. And so I think they're looking forward to having somebody else be in charge of some of those things. So I don't know if they're nodding in their back, at least they're not making me.
Megan's head is going up and down.
Okay, any other comments for the good of the order? Otherwise, thank everybody for coming today, and we are adjourned. Have a good afternoon.